This video will begin to get into more depth on the various stages of energy metabolism. So the big idea here is your food is eventually oxidized to produce CO2, water, and energy, but it's quite a long process. So what are the four main stages of metabolism? Well, in stage one, this is primarily digestion. And digestion is primarily hydrolysis reactions. So we're talking about breaking down molecules with water as the other reactant. So if it's triacylglycerols, it's fats and lipids. Fats and lipids contain triglycerides that we also call triacylglycerols. Um, if it's carbohydrates, this could be sugars, this could be starches, and then remember, proteins are from meats and dairies, dairy products. So, and other sources as well, but generally speaking. So we've got these three main categories: triacylglycerols, carbohydrates, and proteins. And these three categories are funneling down through our four main stages of metabolism. So in digestion, which again is primarily hydrolysis reactions, first the triacylglycerols are hydrolyzed into fatty acids and glycerol. Go one column over, the carbohydrates are hydrolyzed into monosaccharides and the proteins into amino acids. That all happens in stage one, digestion. In stage two, there are specific pathways depending on the type of food. So there's fatty acid oxidation for those that originated from the fatty acids from the triacylglycerols. There's glycolysis of the monosaccharides that came from carbohydrates. And there's amino acid catabolism from the amino acids. They undergo these catabolic reactions. All of these eventually result in the formation of acetyl-CoA. So, or what we sometimes even call C2 for the acetyl group. So they all result in this acetyl-CoA. In glycolysis and amino acid catabolism, they go through pyruvate. But again, even though they go through pyruvate, everybody ends with, or not ends, but in stage two with acetyl-CoA. And eventually, then that leads into the citric acid cycle in stage three. And then in stage four, there's your electron transport chain and your oxidative phosphorylation to make ATP. That should say ATP if we can get that on the screen too. There we go. I think it is. Should say ATP. At the very end, that's important. We want to make sure that we can see that at the end we make ATP. Metabolism is the breakdown or the catabolic processes, catabolism, I cannot ever say that right, of large biomolecules into smaller pieces and then down to CO2. So we have these anabolic and we have these catabolic processes. We're doing catabolic processes, we're doing the breakdown of these large biomolecules that will eventually produce CO2. So I think what's interesting here is that in digestion in stage one, we're doing all hydrolysis. Hydrolysis looks a little different, whether it's a triglyceride or a carbohydrate or a protein. It's the same general reaction that we're breaking down the molecule into smaller parts with water. Then it gets really specific, and the pathway in stage two gets really specific depending on the food type. And then in stage three and stage four, it's a more common pathway. Stage three is this common citric acid cycle. Stage four is this common electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. So it's interesting that these three different things eventually funnel into the last, two stages, 3 and 4, being similar or the same. Okay, so we're going to look at each stage for the 3 different food types, starting with carbohydrates. So again, we're going to look at stage one for each food type. We'll start with carbohydrates, and we're going to be doing hydrolysis. So this is really a review of hydrolysis of our carbohydrates. So here we've got a starch. We've got our glycosidic linkage here, right? Glycosidic bond or linkage. And, we're going to break that glycosidic linkage, add water across that bond. We're going to use amylase here. So we're going to need an enzyme for these hydrolysis reactions to produce glucose. So we get glucose from our starch molecules. So we've got sugars or starches reacting to produce glucose via an enzyme. And so after this, that glucose can undergo glycolysis in stage 2. That's going to be specific for carbohydrates. And then it can go on to stage 3 and stage 4, which is going to be common for all. So this is just the first stage, our hydrolysis, our breaking down of the carbohydrate, into those glucose monomers. So what does stage 1 digestion look like for fats? Well, remember that fats had triglycerides, right? They had this glycerol backbone where we had the 3 carbons in a row. So we have CH2, CH, CH2, and then each carbon had an ester, so an O, and then C double bonded to an O, and then a carbon chain. And so here we've got 18 total carbons for each chain, so a simple triglyceride. Then we've got it reacted with 3 water molecules and lipase as the enzyme. So we've got the lipase enzyme. Breaks it down to form glycerol backbone, the 3 carbons with the 3 OHs, and 3 of the fatty acid chains. So what we're doing is we've got these ester functional groups, right, on our triacylglycerol, and we're just breaking that ester linkage for all 3 of them in the triglyceride. So again, this is review, right? We have seen this before. We've seen hydrolysis of our fats to give 3 fatty acid chains and a glycerol molecule. And then it's going to go on to its specific stage 2 reaction, and then stage 3 and 4 will be common. That citric acid cycle and that electron transport chain will be common for each of them. Okay, so that's what digestion or hydrolysis of fats looks like. What about for proteins? For proteins, remember we had that NCC backbone we were looking for. And so we find that NCC backbone, and where the next NCC backbone starts, we know that's where we've got our peptide bond. So we're going to break one of those peptide bonds. We're going to break one NCC from the next NCC. And we've got a side chain on here, right? The side chain for each of these is CH2, and then a benzene ring. But the point is that we use an enzyme. Here we've got pepsin, an enzyme, and we got water for our hydrolysis to break down our protein into its individual amino acids, right? So we've got our individual amino acids all ready for stage 2 specific to proteins. So that this is the third type of hydrolysis or digestion. So we've looked at carbohydrates and fats and now proteins. And in each case, this is review of the hydrolysis reaction that we learned when we studied these individually. So our stage 2 metabolic pathways will get more specific. Glucose will have to be converted to acetyl-CoA. Fatty acids will have to be converted to acetyl-CoA, and amino acids will have to be converted to acetyl-CoA. So in each case, we're going to have a specific stage 2 metabolic pathway. Now that we've learned about digestion, that's our next step.